Can you hear me? Testing. So I'm good to go? With those guys. I know you guys are ready. You're ready to rock. Welcome everyone this morning. This is a great way to start Monday morning, I think, to get us started for the week with a little bit of laughter, helping us manage stress through laughter. So I welcome those that are here live in Logan, as well as those that are joining us through Zoom. We will have a drawing at the end for a $25 gift card. So stick around to be able to have a participation drawing that way. We are entering everyone. We're putting those in that are not here live into the drawing as well by your name, so stick around for that. But we are so thrilled to be able to have Dr. Matt Woppett join us this morning and talk about laughter and get us started. Like I say, we have many events planned for today. We're in celebration of World Mental Health Day. People are struggling, and we want to recognize that and be able to reduce the stigma, the negative stigma around mental health, and this is one way to do it. So we're joining millions of others around the world who are celebrating World Mental Health Day. As an introduction to Dr. Woppett, he is the Executive Director of the USU Center for Persons with Disabilities. I know they have a new name. I will let Matt tell you that name. With an affiliate appointment as a research associate professor in the USU College of Education and Human Services. Dr. Woppett his background is in special ed and disability studies. Most of his research has been focused on creating inclusive environments to accommodate the needs of diverse populations. Dr. Woppett also conducts research and writes about the effects of laughter in the classroom and genuinely enjoys teaching people how to laugh. He has been referred to as many as the laughter doctor. He has been a featured speaker at state and national conferences and training events. Dr. Woppett's teaching and research on creating inclusive learning environments has recently turned to the effects of environmental stress on learning and social interaction. Dr. Woppett earned his PhD in special education and a Master's of Education in Educational Studies and a Bachelor of Arts in English from the University of Utah. We won't give him any grief or any hard time about that. He also attended the clinical training for mind-body medicine through the Harvard Medical School. He completed his secondary teaching certification while pursuing his master's degree at the University of Utah. In his spare time, Dr. Woppett coaches youth hockey, competes in powerlifting, and spends as much time as possible outdoors rafting Western rivers. So with that, we'd like to introduce Dr. Matt Woppett.
Okay, now that works. That is an old bio. My kids have all grown up and moved out of the house, and I'm not coaching hockey anymore. But anyway, I'm glad to be here today. Thank you for the invitation to share some of my research and some of the work that I do around laughter. So the title of the presentation today, I know they were selling it with the laughter, but I like to start off with a little bit, there. Oh, put it right there, okay. There we go, is that better? Yeah, okay. All right, sorry, technical issues. So what I'm gonna do, everyone expects that when I talk about laughter that it's gonna start out like this. And we will get here at some point. But before we get to here, I'm gonna stress you out a little bit. As Lisa mentioned, we are undergoing and we are living through one of the most stressful periods, at least as people have measured in human history. And it's important, I think, that we understand the context that we're living in, but also what stress does to our bodies. Literally, the title of the presentation is How Stress Makes You a Terrible Person. I don't think many of us quite understand the effects of stress on our body, physiologically and psychologically. And so I'm going to walk you through that. I'm going to stress you out a little bit, and then we'll go and talk a little bit about laughter and how we can use laughter to help manage that stress. So I like to begin with the assumption that most people in the US are currently experiencing chronic pervasive stress. This is different than intermittent, occasional stress. We are under stress all the time. And thankfully, over the past 20 years, there have been several organizations that have measured stress. So we can actually track this with relatively good validity over time. So in 2021, the Gallup Global Emotions Report, so Gallup is the big polling agency, they did their annual survey. They surveyed 160,000 people in 116 countries around the world during 2020 and early 2021, and their findings show that 2020 has officially become the most stressful year in recent history. Nearly 190 million people experienced significantly higher stress in 2020 than in past years. In 2020, the world was a sadder, angrier, more worried, and more stressed out place than it has been at any time in the past 15 years. And 57% of US and Canadian workers reported feeling stress on a daily basis. That's up by 8 percentage points from 2020, and compared with 43% of workers who feel that way globally. The only workers in the world that are more stressed than the US workers are Chinese workers, who report feeling 87% feel chronic pervasive stress. The American Psychological Association also does their annual Stress in America survey. In 2021, they reported that 84% of adults reported feeling at least one emotion associated with prolonged stress. And those most common emotions are anxiety, sadness, and anger. Nearly half of parents, 48%, said that the level of stress in their life has increased compared with before the pandemic. So clearly, we are living through an era where stress is a regular, perpetual part of our daily lives. If we look at the author of the APA report, C. Vale Wright, he said, we just weren't built to maintain this level of stress and hypervigilance and hyperarousal for this length of time. We are almost at a breaking point with so many stressors, with so many of them out of our control. Now, the interesting thing is that last little bit, out of our control. The majority of the stressors that we face in the world, COVID-19, work, other stuff, is completely out of our control. But the one thing that we can control is how we react to these external stimuli. Okay, there we go. So most of us are actually in this particular state. We're so stressed out about being stressed out that we can't remember why we're stressed out, and that's stressing you out, right? Most of us are kind of in this situation, and every day we say, I'm stressed, or at least I'm willing to bet that everybody who's online and everybody who's here in person at some point within the last week has mentioned something about their stress to a family member or a friend. It's become a regular, everyday part of our conversation. But we talk about stress, but do we really know what stress is? We know what it feels like. We know what our reaction to it is, but very few people actually have the ability to articulate what stress is within our body. So I'm going to walk you through that a little bit. Technically, the stress response is the fight or flight response. So if you've taken biology, you know that you've heard this fight or flight response. It was a coin that was termed in 1963 by Hans Selye as he was doing studies on animals in the wild. And the stress response is what this baboon here is feeling. So the baboon is out on the savannah doing whatever a baboon does, and all of a sudden the lion pops out and wants to eat it. And in that moment that the lion pops out, the baboon has to make a choice about what it's going to do. Is it going to run, or is it going to stand its ground and fight? And in order to prepare the baboon for either of those choices, the body goes through a radical change so that it's ready for an extreme expenditure of energy. Regardless of what the baboon chooses, right, it's going to require a lot of energy. If you're going to fight a lion, not something I would recommend. It's going to require some energy. If you're going to run away, lions run pretty dang fast, you're going to need some energy. So the body goes through a radical change. So during the stress response, the heart starts pumping blood more quickly. We start breathing more rapidly, and this helps ensure that our muscles get oxygen so that we can properly react to physical danger in our environment, like a killer hippo. Again, if you're ever faced with a killer hippo, this is the proper response in case you have a question about the fight or flight in this situation. I actually saw a video this weekend of a hippo like totally demolishing a water buffalo, which was pretty impressive. Hippos are mean animals. But our body goes through this change so that we can run as fast as we possibly can. In addition to our heart pumping more rapidly and breathing more shallowly, there's a chemical change within our body. Our body releases adrenaline and cortisol. Those are the two primary stress hormones. And these stress hormones change the way that our body functions. It's partially that adrenaline that ramps up your heart rate. But the adrenaline and cortisol also make a few other changes. One of them being, it makes our blood more sticky. Why would you want sticky blood? Because if you run and you get, you scrape yourself on something or whatever, or if you fight and you get bit or scratched or whatever, you want to make sure that you don't bleed. And so during the stress response, the body's preparing itself to be injured, right? And so your platelets get more sticky so that if you are cut or if you're bitten, that your blood will clot and that you'll be able to survive the stressful encounter. Okay, so all this stuff's going on in our body. That feeling of anxiety that we feel when we're stressed out, that heart pumping more rapidly, that's all that stress response. Then your muscles get tense, right? When we're stressed out, we feel tension within our body. It's because your muscles have this extra blood going to them and they're prepared for a huge expenditure of energy. Unfortunately, most of us don't actually expend that energy. Most of us just sit there. So we experience the exact same stress response as the guy running away from the hippo or the baboon running away from the lion when we're late for work, when we forget a deadline, when we argue with a colleague, when our boss gets mad at us. We experience that exact same stress response. The same stuff is going on in our body, even though technically we're not in physical danger. So your heart's beating more rapidly, you're breathing more shallowly, your blood is sticky, you feel amped up and awake and energized, right? You probably had a stressful day where you've gone home and you can't sleep. That's the adrenaline running through your body. Again, in the wild, when you have the stress response, you expend that energy. You either fight or run and you survive or not. Here, we just sit there, right? And the sitting there is the problem. So to our body, a stressful work environment is basically no different than fighting off a lion or a tiger or a bear for 40 hours a week or more. Our body can't tell the difference, whether it's stress between you and a colleague or whether you have a tiger walking into your office getting ready to jump on top of you. Your body doesn't say, oh, this is just an interpersonal conflict. I don't need to worry about this. The body recognizes stress and responds exactly the same way. So this guy has a lot of tension and he's a little bit stressed out, I would say. When you're sitting there at your desk and you're feeling that stress, you're feeling exactly the same thing. You're just not going to get injured, at least physically. We also feel the exact same response when we're chased by wild monkeys. So if you're ever curious about what to do when a monkey on a bike shows up, this is the proper response there. But again, the girl's feeling the stress response. This is an actual, I don't know if it's an actual danger, but it's potentially a danger, right? And her body's prepared and she's probably running faster than she's ever run in her entire life. Unfortunately, again, most of us don't have wild monkeys, tigers, lions, or bears walking into our offices. Most of us are dealing with non-material threats that just surround us in our environment. So I'm grossly oversimplifying this. So anybody who's in biology who says you're forgetting this and this and this, I recognize that. But I'm trying to hit the high points here with regards to what stress does to our body. The way that we can really see the effects of stress within our culture is within the pie chart of death here. And this is about the most scientific as I'm going to be today. But if we look at Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic countries, or weird countries as they're called now, the number one cause of death is cardiovascular disease. Okay, the death rate of cardiovascular disease is directly correlated with levels of stress felt in these countries. And so today in the US, if we look at healthcare complaints, 60 to 80% of healthcare complaints are caused by or are exacerbated by stress. So again, if you look at this, you're like, oh, I don't know if that's true. It could be our diet. Well, yes. It could be our diet. We have a terrible diet because a lot of us manage stress by eating poorly. And when you couple a poor diet and eating poorly and the arterial plaque and some of the other things that occur in your body with sticky blood from chronic pervasive stress, guess what happens? You build up blood clots, you have more narrowing of the arteries. It sort of exacerbates underlying situation and leads to more unoptimal outcomes, as we'll call them. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening in your cardiovascular system. Let's talk about the rest of your body, because most of us, as I mentioned, are going through stress on a much more extensive sort of a scale than any animal in the wild. In the wild, when an animal undergoes the stress response, it sees a threat, it responds to the threat, and within about 5 to 10 minutes, the animal resolves that threat. It's either run away or it's been eaten or attacked. And then the animal goes back. Robert Sapolsky, who's actually a biologist at Stanford, has written several things about this. He's written a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the reason why zebras don't get ulcers is because when a zebra is attacked by a lion like this, the zebra either attacks or gets away, and then it goes back to being a zebra. It doesn't sit under the baobab tree out there on the savannah and worry about where the kids are and what could happen if that lion comes back and everything else. The zebra goes back to being a zebra. As humans, unfortunately, we have a little more evolved brain, and our brain has the ability to increase our stress levels by projecting into the future and by remembering the past. This is a factor. This is an attribute that many other animals don't have. And so we can sit there at our desk and we can tell ourselves how terrible the future is going to be and how awful things are going to be with our colleague when we go back into work on Monday. Or we can remember the past and say, oh, I can't believe I behaved that way. I should change the way that I behave. I'm a terrible person, right? Our brain tells ourselves all these stories. And as a result, we don't recognize that most of the time we're actually safe. There's not a heightened threat, but our brain is able to keep that stress response turned on. And by keeping that stress response turned on, the body says, wow, this person is really running. This lion is chasing this person for a really long time. They need some more energy because this is outrageous. I was never intended to be on for more than 10 minutes. And so what the stress response does within your body is your body says, okay, this is a prolonged stress response. We need to funnel as much energy as we can to that stress response, to those big skeletal muscles that help us respond. And so the body does that by shutting down non-essential processes. So these would be things like growth, reproduction, digestion. And if you think about it, it makes complete sense. You don't need to grow another inch if you're not going to survive the next 5 minutes. You don't need to reproduce, and actually some biologists would argue you shouldn't reproduce if you can't survive the next 5 minutes, right? And then digestion, that Big Mac or whatever you had for lunch yesterday or whatever you had for breakfast today, you don't need to worry about digesting that if you're not going to survive the next 5 minutes. And so what the body does is it shuts down these processes and it allows you to use that energy for running or for fighting. Now, we see this in humans, in children who grow up in stressful environments. Many children who grow up in really abusive, stressful environments end up suffering from what's called failure to thrive. Failure to thrive is literally the growth process being shut down. And we've learned that when we can remove these children from these environments and put them with supportive adults, that that growth process kicks back in. Reproduction, it used to be thought, reproduction, if you were infertile, you were infertile. Now, if you're going to reproductive clinics, one of the first lines of intervention they're using is stress reduction, because we've learned with reproductive disorders, that if you can manage stress, that many times that reproduction system will turn back on. And then digestion. Digestion, many of us who, when you're stressed out, feel that upset stomach, chronic diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome. All of these things are pervasive in these weird countries that we live in, and it's directly correlated with the high levels of stress that we feel in our daily lives. Okay, the other thing that your body shuts down, in addition to growth, reproduction, and digestion, is your immune system. And any of you who have children in schools or have been teachers, or, well, we're all here at the university, so we all go through this cycle. Our immune system is really important to keeping us healthy. Unfortunately, we have certain deadlines. We have certain patterns within our lives that require us to perform a certain way. So here at the university, we work up to, let's say, Thanksgiving break. And you have a lot of grading to get done, and you have other things to get done. And right after Thanksgiving break is finals. And so you have to get prepped for that, whether you're a professor or whether you're a student or even whether you're a staff person. We feel these sort of deadlines coming up. And so we work really hard up to these deadlines. And then you go on Thanksgiving break or you go on Christmas break. And what's the first thing that happens? You get sick, right? Or you start feeling sick right before you go on break. And you go on break and all of a sudden you're sick for, the majority of your time off. You start to feel better. And then you go back and start the process all over again. This is your body dampening your immune system. Your immune system takes a lot of energy. And so the body, again, a lot of the stress hormones are kind of toxic to that immune system, and it dampens it and says, okay, this energy that we would have used to keep the immune system in balance, we're going to shunt to that stress response. And unfortunately, that opens us up to a whole host of bad things, including death. So, okay, that's from your neck down. Now let's talk about from your neck up, if you're not feeling stressed out already. From your neck up, what happens in your brain when you're stressed out? Well, I want to make a quick distinction here between the upper brain and the lower brain. All animals have what's called a lower brain. And in fact, in older biology textbooks, they called the lower brain the reptilian brain, right? So this is the limbic system in our body. This includes the amygdala, the hippocampus. This is the part of the brain that most animals have that's responsible for the automatic processes in our body. This is the part of the brain that's responsible for your heart beating, for reproducing, for eating, for kind of those things that keeps your digestive system moving. It's kind of the part of the system that keeps your body alive. Now, as we move up the evolutionary ladder, the brain grows. And in humans, the largest, most developed part of our brain is the frontal lobe, and particularly the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex in humans, in the upper brain, is what's responsible for allowing us to be human. It's what allows us to tell fictional stories. It's what allows us to project into the future and to remember the past. It's what allows us to wake up in the morning and say, I need to get showered and then I need to comb my hair, right? Your executive function, the things you need to do to go through your day, to plan, to think ahead. The prefrontal cortex is also the part of your brain that's responsible for paying attention. And it's the part of your brain responsible for working memory. And it's the part of your brain that's responsible for compassion, for looking at another human being and saying, that's another human being. I should be nice to them and they'll be nice to me. Now, okay, so that prefrontal upper brain is really, really important. Now, what happens when we get stressed, again, there we go, is that the hormones that are released when we're stressed out shift our thinking from our upper brain to our lower brain. It literally changes the way that our brain functions. And so when we're stressed out, again, the body thinks there's an actual physical threat, and it changes to that lower brain because that lower brain's responsible for survival. That's the part that's responsible for your heart beating, for releasing hormones, for all that stuff. And so it shifts your thinking so that you're focused on your individual survival. You're not worried about other things out there. And this sort of leads to interesting behaviors. Stress hormones literally change the way that our brain functions. And Herbert Benson, who the Benson Henry Mind-Body Institute at Harvard Medical School is named after, did some of the research on this. And he says that when you're stressed out, you're essentially giving yourself a chemical prefrontal lobotomy. He says you're cutting off that part of the brain that makes you human, and you're acting in a way that is not being the best person that you can be. And so this is why when you're stressed out, you have a hard time paying attention. You have a hard time remembering things. This is why you're occasionally mean to people that you love, right? When you're stressed out, I have 3 kids. I have my partner here. And I sometimes come home, even though I teach this stuff, I'm still a terrible person occasionally. And I'll come home after a really stressful day and I will snap. I will be angry. And because that part of my brain, because I'm stressed out, that part of my brain that says, this is your family, and they're the only hope that you'll be taken care of in your old age, right? And that part of the brain is not online, and I am mean. And then I go to the bedroom and I change and I kind of relax and I have to take a deep breath and I say, oh, such a jerk. And then you got to go out and apologize. And when that moment, right, that's the brain opening up saying, okay, now that part, that human part is back. And you recognize that you need to go, make amends. This is when you lose something and you're stressed out. You probably all, I did this a couple of weeks ago, actually a few months ago, I lost my phone, which I rarely do. But when you lose your phone these days, it's worse than losing your keys, right? Everything is on our phones. So you lose your phone, it gets really, really stressful. And you get worked up and you're trying to retrace your day and you're trying to figure out where things are. It happened to me. I was sitting there, I spent like 2 days trying to retrace my day the 2 days prior, and I couldn't remember things, and I just got more and more worked up. And again, I finally just gave it up. I finally said, the phone's gone, my life is over, everyone's gonna have my identity, my credit score is gonna plummet, right? Everything out there. And after I just gave up and relaxed, took a few deep breaths, kind of went about, just forgot it, guess what? Brain opens up and I'm like, oh, I think it's in my suit jacket pocket. And I went in my closet and it was in my suit jacket pocket. But I was so stressed out and so worked up about it that part of my brain, that working memory and that attention and everything wasn't allowing me to kind of put the pieces together. So we feel this, even though many people have a hard time articulating the shift within our brain. So now you're feeling good. That's a real crash course in what stress does in your body. It does a whole lot of other really bad things too. And if you want to learn more about those, you can come talk to me later. But those are the basics in terms of what stress does to your body. So let's talk about how we handle it. Okay. So if our bodies have a stress response, and if our bodies are subject to the laws of nature and physics, it must needs be that our body has an equal and opposite response, right? So it's right, Newton's laws of physics. Thankfully, we do. Unfortunately, we didn't really discover it, or somebody didn't name it until the 1970s. Herbert Benson, who was a cardiologist at Harvard Medical School, was doing work on high blood pressure. He was doing work in monkeys. And in the late 60s, early 70s is also the time that the Beatles were coming back from India, and other people were coming, and transcendental meditation was becoming kind of the hip thing to do. And a bunch of hippies came to Herbert Benson and said, we can lower our blood pressure without drugs. Now, Herbert Benson's research was sponsored by drug companies. He was doing this work and testing medications to lower blood pressure. And so these people come in and say, we can lower our blood pressure without drugs. And he was curious. He said, okay, well, let's test this. And so he brought them in, ran them through a series of stress tests. And again, you can stress yourself out with your brain. Let me kind of go back. You can stress yourself out 2 ways: with your mind. So you can think about really stressful things and you can get that stress response turned on through your mind. You can also stress yourself out through your body. So if you've ever had someone in your family, or if you've had cardiac issues, when you go into the hospital, what sort of stress test do they put you through? They put you on a treadmill and they make you run really, really fast, right? And by doing that, your body says, oh my goodness, this person's being chased. And it turns on the stress response in your body. That's why they do it. And so you get that stress response turned on. And so he'd put these people on the treadmill, they'd run, and then he'd say, okay, lower your blood pressure. Because again, the stress response raises that blood pressure, it raises the pulse rate. And these people would sit down and they could, within 5 minutes, lower their blood pressure, their heart rate, their respiration rate, everything. And sort of come back to a sort of normal, quote unquote, normal status. So he went on to really dedicate his career to studying what is this response. And he traveled around the world. He went to people from different faith traditions. He went to all sorts of populations. And he found out that this response is present in all sorts of things that we do, all sorts of health promoting behaviors. And he ended up calling it the relaxation response. So we know how to get stressed out, but very few of us understand how to relax. So the relaxation response is actually very simple. The relaxation response is something innate, human. It's built in with every one of us. Unfortunately, we don't have much practice with it. But what Herbert Benson found in his work is that the relaxation response has 2 steps. Number 1, you need to do something with some repetition. So the repetition of a sound, a word, a thought, a phrase, or a muscular activity. And then the passive return to that repetition when other thoughts intrude. Okay, so that seems odd, right? You're like, what does that even mean? Well, essentially what it means is that if we can bring ourselves back to this present moment and focus on the here and now, most of us aren't actually in any real physical danger. If we can turn off our brain, focus here and now, and recognize that we're okay, that we're safe, that we're healthy, that we're fine, this breaks that train of thought, either projecting the future or the past, or conscious and unconscious, and it allows the body to shut off the stress response. If many of you have done mindfulness, this is exactly what mindfulness is, right? You watch your breathing, and as your attention wanders, you bring your attention back to your breath, okay? This is exercise. Any type of exercise, any sort of repetitious exercise does this: running, rowing, yoga. There's a lot of research on these types of exercise and their effect on our body and inducing the relaxation response. Dancing, knitting, crocheting, fishing, right? Anything that has a repetitive element to it turns off our brain and allows us to feel good about ourselves. This is why we like to pursue these behaviors. Yes, we're interested in them, but the funny thing is that many of these behaviors are very self-reinforcing. People sit down to knit when they need to relax. People tie flies when they need to relax. People like to go fishing. People like to exercise, especially when they feel good about it. If you've ever exercised and you've had sort of that runner's high, this is the relaxation response kicking in your body. If you've ever sat down and meditated or prayed or any one of these other things that has some repetitive element to it, and you felt that relaxation, that is the relaxation response kicking in your body. Now again, this requires practice. The stress response is automatic, right? It turns on and we're ready to go. The relaxation response is not automatic. It requires practice and repetition so that we get good at it. The one thing that we know though, when we look at the relaxation response, what does it do? It essentially does the opposite of the stress response. So again, tons and tons of studies, really interesting work that Herbert Benson did, where he'd go to Buddhist monks in the Himalayas and he'd put oxygen monitors and like heart monitors and EEGs on their heads and everything just to see what happened. And over time, study after study after study, he found that the relaxation response causes the heart rate to decrease, blood pressure to decrease, respiratory rate to decrease, oxygen consumption decreases, muscle tension decreases, slow brain waves, which are the good, calm brain waves, increase. We lower our perception of stress, so we don't feel like things are as stressful, and we're less reactive, right? When we're stressed out, we tend to react, right? We're not responsive. And so study after study after study since the 1970s have shown that the relaxation response does exactly the opposite of the stress response. Unfortunately, very few people are talking about the relaxation response, and more and more of us are starting to practice it. Within the past 10 years, mindfulness and some other things have become more common, but we still can do more. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the relaxation response, like the stress response, can work both ways. We can use the relaxation response as a meditative or a sitting practice and use the mind to calm the body, okay? Very much like we can use our mind to get ourselves stressed out. We can also use the body through exercise, yoga, or laughter, and use the body to calm the mind. It works two ways. It doesn't matter which way you use, it just matters that you figure out a way that works for you. This is why some people like active things to manage their stress. Other people like less active things, like meditation, prayer. Okay, so what about laughter? There you go. You've had a real crash course. That's about 3 hours of content, and I don't know how I'm watching my time here. Okay, let's talk about laughter, because laughter, I would argue, is the most fun way to manage your stress, and it is a built-in stress management technique that we all have. Unfortunately, we do not use it. Now, in the West, in the weird countries, we don't laugh as adults, okay? Most of us have been taught through our lives that serious, real-world people don't laugh. And as we grow up, that laughter becomes less and less. There's actually people who've looked at this. Children tend to laugh more frequently than adults. And in fact, many adults laugh maybe 3 to 5 times a day, if that, which is really, really depressing, because laughter is a natural, inborn technique within our body to manage stress. So what is laughter? Well, I forgot I had that slide in there. Arguments in favor of laughter. So this is, again, an argument for why we should look at laughter. There's really no studies that have found that laughter is bad. So you have all sorts of drug studies and other things out there that show, and if you've watched drug commercials on TV, right, may cause your leg to fall off, may cause internal bleeding, may cause your ears to turn blue, right? There's always a side effect. In all of the studies of laughing, there's never been something that's shown, you know, this is a negative effect of laughter. They're virtually universally positive, which means that this is something we should be looking into more. Okay, so what is laughter? Okay, I don't have time to go into all the details with this, but let's just say that animals laugh, particularly mammals. Mammals laugh, and there are studies on bears, rats, dogs, cats, monkeys. They all laugh. Unfortunately for us, it doesn't sound like laughing. It's called chuffing. And so animals chuff. And chuffing signals social acceptance, and it signals I'm okay with you, or you okay with me. I have the pictures of the bears up here. I grew up in Alaska, and we'd go up to Barrow. It's gone back to its Inupiaq name, which is Utkavik, but way back in my day, it was called Barrow, Alaska. And polar bears used to walk down the streets in Barrow. And when polar bears come, they're solitary animals. They have huge territories, and they are not social at all. And they only come into contact with each other when they're coming to a place where there's a lot of food. So typically it was a whale hunt. There's a whale on the beach there in Barrow, and all the polar bears come in. And so these bears are not used to being around other bears. And as bears come in contact with another bear, they either pop their jaws and let out a low growl, or they chuff. And the chuff, it's a forceful exhalation. They go, ugh. I mean, people hear it and they're like, oh, they're gonna fight. But really, it's laughter, right? It's this forceful exhalation of air that the other bear hears it, and the other bear says, oh, okay, you're okay with me. And the other bear chuffs, and the other bear goes, okay, you're okay with me. And they kind of pass each other on the street, and everyone's really disappointed that there wasn't a huge bear battle. But all herd animals do this. Elk, if you go hunting and you've seen herd animals, you know that a herd will be out eating, and then there's usually a watch animal, right? And the watch animal, when they sense danger, will make a high-pitched sound, and the whole herd picks their head up, right? And they're looking around watching for danger. And when the danger is past, when those animals feel like there's nothing left to pay attention to, they chuff, and the whole herd goes back to eating. You see this in the wild all the time. And it's in that sound, that chuffing sound relaxes the group. Now, we have exactly the same response. When we hear laughter, we relax. Now, you may not always feel that, but when you hear laughter, it is just an innate, inborn sort of response. So many people researchers speculate that laughter may have been used on an evolutionary level to help us cooperate. It's a way of communicating beyond language, right? We can laugh with a person who doesn't speak our language, and we feel safe in that person's presence. Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology, said that laughter and singing and smiling tune the group emotionally, they get them on the same wavelength so they can work together more effectively as a group. So many people feel that even prior to language, that laughter may have been used by early humans to cooperate, to get along, and to be able to get things done, right? Kind of move us along up that evolutionary ladder. Okay, so again, there's a lot more detail into sort of that history, and there is a lot of people who are studying laughter. The study of laughter is called gelotology, G-E-L-O-tology, not J-E-L-L-O-tology, which my terrible joke is that gelotology is the study of laughter, and J-E-L-L-O-tology is the study of Mormon culture in Utah, which that's a terrible joke. I've lived here long enough, I shouldn't tell that anymore. Okay, but there are people who are legitimately studying this. And so what we do when we look at the research on laughter is we say, okay, what does this do within the body? Same as the research on stress. And when we look at the effects of laughter on the body, number one, it promotes cardiovascular health. Okay, so when we laugh, our blood pressure drops, pulse rate drops, the opposite of the stress response. Our blood vessels dilate and our walls become more slippery. It releases nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide. That's what your dentist gives you, nitric oxide. It's different. And this reduces inflammation and makes your platelets less sticky. It's doing the opposite of what that stress response does, right? Okay, they've also found that laughter, extended bouts of laughter, 10 to 15 minutes, have the same cardiovascular benefits, aerobic benefits, as 20 to 30 minutes of aerobic exercise. So they're actually using laughter now in assisted living facilities, people who can't do high impact aerobic activities, as a way to increase cardiovascular health. There's a lot of these studies actually going on in Japan and Korea. Laughter strengthens our immune system. When we laugh, the immune system comes back into balance. It increases lymphatic flow. It boosts the immune system with these antiviral, anti-infection cells. These are actually really terrible studies where they take people with compromised immune systems, usually cancer patients, whose through chemotherapy, their immune system has been suppressed. And after chemotherapy, they take one group and they have them watch a funny movie, and they take another group and have them watch a stressful, dramatic movie, and then they bring them back and take their blood and look at where their immune system lies. And they find that people who have actually laughed, that their immune system is boosted, right? And the people who have felt stress or drama, their immune system remains suppressed. Okay, it also releases endorphins. So again, this is the same thing that exercise does. When you exercise, endorphins are released. The primary endorphins are dopamine and serotonin. What are the two endorphins that antidepressants address? Dopamine and serotonin, right? Whether you're taking Paxil or Effexor or now my brain isn't going to work on the stage here. Wellbutrin, I mean, all of these sort of prescription drugs, they're usually classified as SSRIs or SNRIs, right? That are supposed to change the way that our brain processes serotonin. Laughter naturally releases that. It increases the levels of these feel-good chemicals in our bodies, which helps us feel better about ourselves, it helps us feel better about others, and it also decreases adrenaline and cortisol secretions. Okay, laughter has also been shown to promote attachment and bonding. Laughter is one of the few things that our body does that releases oxytocin. Oxytocin is also known as the trust hormone. It's the hormone that's released when a mother is nursing her child. It's the hormone that creates that chemical mother-child bond. It's also released during sex, creates sort of that bond between people. Laughter releases oxytocin, which means that when you laugh with somebody, you're literally creating a chemical connection with them that says, I trust you. And this is more recent research, and this is actually really, really interesting. And you can almost feel this. If there's people that you work with or people that you hang out with who you genuinely laughed with, you have a different connection with them than people who you've never laughed with. And a lot of it's due to this release of oxytocin during the laughter process. So essentially, in short, laughter switches on all the systems that stress switches off, which means that we should laugh more. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to skip this one, and I am going to teach you how to laugh, okay? So we are going to learn how to laugh. And yes, you are going to laugh today. So we can laugh several different ways. We can laugh by telling jokes. Unfortunately, sense of humor varies across culture and people. The jokes that I find funny may not be something that my partner finds funny. In fact, I like Monty Python. I think that she believes it's ridiculous and doesn't find it at all funny, right? And so humor, yes, it can be used to stimulate laughter, but humor is culturally mediated. So this was actually discovered by Dr. Madan Kataria in India, and he was doing research on laughter, and he said, well, if laughter's so good, why aren't we doing it more? So he went to the park with a bunch of his friends, and they sat around telling jokes so that they would laugh. Unfortunately, that only works till somebody tells that joke that pisses somebody else off. And then nobody's laughing. So he said, there's gotta be a way to laugh without humor. And so he kind of went back to the drawing board, and what he recognized, and if we look at some of the research, laughter, when we hear laughter, we respond with laughter. And so we can essentially fake it till we make it. So what we do with laughter yoga is we do fake laughter, and fake laughter, because it's so ridiculous, turns to real laughter very quickly. And so you're getting very nervous now. You're like, oh my goodness, what's he gonna have us do? I'm going to teach you how to laugh doing the laughter yoga style. So we are gonna do a few silly things here. You do not have to do them if you don't want to, but I would highly encourage you to. Because again, I think it demonstrates this principle of laughter being incredibly healthy, and people feel good after we do laughter. So, okay, so what we do with laughter is we start off in a laughter yoga session with clapping. It's very scientific. We go like this: ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. You ready? Let's go. Ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Okay, after we're done that and we've all come back together, we're gonna go like this. Very good, yay! No? Okay, let's try it. Very good, yay! I don't have time to tell you all about that. Watch Amy Cuddy's talk on power posing, right? And why you spread your body out. So we need to get laughter warmed up. Laughter lives in different parts of our bodies. The ho's live here, the ha's are in here, the he's are somewhere up in here. So we're gonna use our fingertips, and we're going to go like this, ho. Okay, then you're gonna go to your next one, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho. Ho, 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 ho. Okay, now we're gonna go all the way through. You're gonna go ho, 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 ho. You ready? Okay. Ho, 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 ho. Ha. Ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, 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 ha. Ha, 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 ha. Okay, all the way through. Ha, 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 ha. He. He, he. He, he, he. He, 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 he. He, 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 he. Okay, all the way through. He, 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 he. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. 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 Very good, yay! Perfect. So you start, and it's hard to stop because you're like, that's ridiculous. And then, but we do all sorts of silly things like this in a laughter yoga session. We can do milkshake laughter. I will show you this one. Okay, you have two containers. We're gonna go, oh, oh. Okay, I hope everybody on Zoom is doing this too, and I hope people you're with or think you're really weird. But okay, here we go. Oh, Oh. Let's do one more. Oh. Oh. You need one more milkshake because we all need 3 milkshakes for breakfast. Oh. Oh. Okay. Unfortunately, we can't do a full laughter session, but you can laugh whenever you want. If you want to find people who you can laugh with, there's people who do laughter yoga on YouTube. It's not something that's copyright protected that I can only do. Usually what a laughter yoga session entails is we get together, we laugh with silly exercises like this for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we lay on the ground in a circle and just laugh, right? You get your laughter warmed up, and then you just lay there and you laugh. We actually do have a laughter club here at USU. The honors program has been having me come in every week, Fridays at 12:30. It's open to everybody out here on the quad. So if you're walking by the quad in front of Old Main and you hear some people laughing, you're welcome to come and sit down and join us. And you will see us laying on the ground in a circle laughing for like 10 minutes. It's our most remarkable, just freeing feeling to laugh without being self-conscious and without worrying. And most people report afterwards they're more awake, they're more happy, they're more optimistic, they feel more relaxed. It's a really remarkable process that we don't do enough. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, do I have to do laughter yoga to laugh? No, the more you practice laughing, the better you get at it. We can laugh at any time. And again, with practice, you can do it without a problem. I can just laugh, right? Like now. Okay, if I do that, I'm just a weird person, right? If I'm doing that outside walking down the sidewalk, somebody's coming to pick me up and take me out. So that's why you got to learn ways to structure your laughter. That's why you have these things. These are remarkable. These are laughter permission devices, LPDs. Yes. See, you're the coolest person out there. Everyone's like, oh, he has the best friends. He must be awesome, right? Okay, you can laugh anytime. Your phone gives you permission. We didn't have, before cell phones, I don't know how people did it, but nowadays they're remarkable. You just have to hope nobody calls you while you're laughing. Okay, so I'm quickly running out of time. We can't do a full laughter session here, but what I do want to encourage you to do is to practice something, okay? The relaxation response, as I mentioned, is not something that we are explicitly taught. We are explicitly taught how to get stressed out. Our status symbols, our important people are stressed out people. And unfortunately, we model those behaviors. Nobody's out there teaching us how to relax. Nobody's out there teaching us to calm down. People are expecting us to ramp it up even more, which means that we have to practice. And most of us suck at it. But as Jake said to Finn in Adventure Time, dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. So you got to start somewhere, whether it's laughter, whether it's meditation, whether it's exercise, whether it's prayer, whether it's yoga, whatever the case may be, find something that's going to help you induce that relaxation response so that you don't get stuck in the cycle of everyday stress. Now, before I end, I want to point out, people always point this out. People always say, well, we need some stress. And you're right. There's actually something called the Yerkes-Dodson curve. It's kind of this U-shaped, bell-shaped curve. And yes, we need some stress.
And we need a little bit of stress to get out of bed in the morning, to get to work, to do things. Unfortunately, most of us have a hard time balancing on the top of that curve. Most of us slide over into an area called distress, right? Most of us are overly stressed all the time. We need a little stress in our lives. A few years ago, I went to India and we met this potter there. His name's Anurag Das. And he says, every pot of clay needs to pass through fire to get strong, and man's just another pot of clay. I think that's a really important thing. We need a little bit of stress. Stress and, something against us, working against us, makes us stronger, just like fire makes a pot stronger. Unfortunately, what happens when you fire a pot too much? It breaks, right? It shatters. It doesn't work. And so we want to avoid sort of getting overfired, as it were. Unfortunately, most of us are overfired. Most of us are living in a state of distress. Most of us are living in a state of not ease, but dis-ease. And that is something that we need to stop. So with that said, I believe I'm out of time. I want to thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today. I hope that you learned something. Please contact me if you want to talk more, you need more details. But thank you, Lisa. Thank you, HR, for allowing me to do this. I should turn this off.
Thank you, Dr. Wappa. That was wonderful. I found myself laughing even when he wasn't telling us to laugh. So that was very well done. So we're going to do a drawing. There are several, obviously, people that are here virtually, and what goes better to make us laugh and happy than ice cream? So $25 gift card to Cold Stone. Everybody who attended virtually, their name is in here as well. So the name is Austin Egbert. So Austin, you have won a $25 gift card. Tony, what I'll do is I'll ask you to put my email in the chat so Austin can email me and we can get him his gift card. As a celebration for World Mental Health, we now have, it's called Positive Impact. We're going to have dogs out here on the quad that you can go and relax and be able to pet the dogs and spend some time if that's something that interests you. And then we have yoga on the quad at 10:30. There is a schedule of events out there in the lobby. And for those that are virtual, you can click on WMHD for World Mental Health Day.usu.edu for a full listing of events. We encourage you to participate in as many events as possible. Every event has prizes, and you can also gain some insight like we did with Dr. Wappa's presentation. Let's give him one more round of applause, please. And thank you for coming.